We'll get to all of that. We got to start this morning with James Harden. The Sixers introduced their new superstar yesterday at a presser in Philadelphia. Wasn't long ago, the Nets introduced their new superstar, Harden, at a presser in Brooklyn. For Harden, this now the second time he's forced his way out of a team in 13 months. So, among other questions Harden was asked yesterday, why he wanted out of Brooklyn and why Philly.
Originally, when I was going through everything I was going through, in Houston, Philly was my first choice. It just didn't happen. So, but just detailed, I don't really want to get into, the Brooklyn situation. I just knew, for a very long time this was a perfect fit.
All right, Broussard, I'll start with you. Do you agree with Harden that the Sixers are a perfect fit?
It's a better fit than that jacket or whatever the heck it was he was wearing last night. Cloak, yeah. Is that the word for it? A cloak? But no, it's not the perfect fit because guess what, Jenna? There is no perfect fit for James Harden. If I have a buddy who's been married and divorced 4 times and he comes to me, Chris, this is the one. I found the perfect girl for me. Excuse me if I'm skeptical, all right? Because you told me that every other girl was the perfect fit for you. Oh, and also, you cheated on every other girl. You were a big part of why it didn't work out. So, no, this is not the perfect fit because Dwight Howard in his prime was not the perfect fit with James Harden. Chris Paul, who willingly got off the ball to defer to you, wasn't the perfect fit with James Harden. Russell Westbrook, who you'd been a teammate with at 10 years old, buddies going way back in the day, wasn't the perfect fit. Should I even bring up John Wall, once an all-star perennially? Not a perfect fit. And the granddaddy of them all, Kevin Durant, was not a perfect fit. And Nick, people can say a lot of things about Kevin Durant. You burner accounts, social media behavior, all that. I would say Kevin Durant is one of the easiest superstars ever to play with. He doesn't take a ton of shots. He doesn't dominate the basketball. He doesn't over-dribble. He doesn't have an overbearing personality. He can fit into any system, played with Russell Westbrook and fit together. Seamlessly dropped into Golden State. Missed a season and a half in Brooklyn. Drops in yet last year and fits in perfectly. If you don't look across the room and see that guy, Kevin Durant, in the locker room and say, yo, we can win it, regardless of what Kyrie Irving's doing. If that doesn't motivate you and make you say, we can win a championship because I'm that guy and he's that guy, then I'm sorry. Joel Embiid or anybody else isn't going to do it for you. So, no, it's not the perfect fit, Nick. And they won't win a title.
Okay, you said they won't win a title. You just said that at the end? I want to make sure I heard that right.
That's just what I said.
Well, wow. I'm going to have to let that statement marinate for a bit because I would say if Embiid and Harden stay together for the next 5 years, I would imagine they will win a title. They could win the title this year, and I've been highly critical of Harden. However, I think our friend Chris Broussard is doing a touch of revisionist history. It started with, in his prime, Dwight Howard. I don't know that I would call Houston Dwight Howard prime Dwight Howard, but you're right, it didn't work. Now, in Harden's defense, there are a lot of people that would tell you playing with Dwight Howard, particularly at that point in his career, wasn't exactly a joy. Then you got to Chris Paul, and I think that team was good enough to win a title and probably would have won a title if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt. That didn't fit. But I also think there are a lot of people that would tell you Chris Paul is not exactly a joy to play with. Then there's Russell Westbrook, and I think we have ample evidence that Russell Westbrook has not been a joy to play with. And then the last thing you did there is the part that I think is the most unfair. You used the marriage analogy, but I think I can say this, it's 2022. The last, grouping in Brooklyn wasn't, a traditional marriage. It was a triumvirate. There were 3 people involved, And I don't think Harden's real issues were with Kevin Durant. I think it was with Kyrie Irving, another guy who has a history of not being the easiest to play with. So it is not a long list of Harden co-stars that it's like, wow, the only guy he didn't get along with is James Harden. Now, with that said, James Harden has to wear his attitude in Brooklyn, which was abysmal. He has to wear quitting on 2 teams. He has to wear the playoff failures. All of that is true. And so I am not here to all of a sudden be like, James Harden's a perfect teammate. I think he's far from it. But I also think putting all of the blame at those pairings not working out at his feet when all of the parties involved, Harden and his co-star, have had trouble coexisting with other co-stars is not a full reading of the history. But from a pure basketball perspective, I do think the Sixers have the only starting 5 in the East that Milwaukee looks at and is like, oh boy, that's a pain. You have Tyrese Maxey who can get his own shot. You have James Harden. You then are going to be able to say, okay, what do we want to do with the 4th spot? But before you can get there, you have Matisse Thybulle, who's going to guard the other team's best player. That then 4th spot, set it aside, and Joel Embiid causing massive problems at center. The 4th spot can either be Tobias Harris, an overpaid player, but a player who can still get buckets, or if you want to go 3 and D, you go Danny Green. Those 2 guys, I think, depending on the matchup. So I do think basketball-wise, this is a great fit. Now, will the personalities mesh long-term? I don't think so, but I would say this, Wilds. Oh, okay. I think the Sixers are more likely to win a title this year than they are to never win a title with Joel Embiid and James Harden together.
No.
If you give me 2 options, they win it immediately or never, I would go immediately.
See, I like the immediate championship angle. Not necessarily because everything is going to be beautiful and it's a perfect fit, Broussard. It's more because there won't be time enough for things to fall apart. Because right now, you were talking about the marriage analogy. They're in the honeymoon period. I want to show you this video, get your take on it, because I thought this was very telling about the immediate chemistry. This is Joel and Sam Cassell and Harden working on Joel's step back. He's like, oh, hey, James, how are you? You always do that step back. Can you show me how it works? So he kind of works on it. See, there's Harden. Then in the game, Joel's like, sure, we're down big. Why don't I try this step back? So to me, this represents and exhibits, Broussard, everything that Harden didn't have in Brooklyn, where it's like, you know what? I didn't have all Kyrie for half the games. I don't think he was actually committed. Meanwhile, I go 100 miles south, and next thing you know, I've got one of the best players in the league actively trying to get better on the first day that I'm here. So to me, this bodes well. Does it bode well 5 years down the road? I'm not sure. But the honeymoon period, I think, can yield real fruit. Were you impressed, as I was, with that video?
No, I wasn't impressed. I mean, it was cute. It was cute. But no, I wasn't impressed. Doesn't change my mind. And look, sure, if James Harden goes out and wins a championship with Philadelphia, more power to him. He is one of the absolute best players ever to play. And I would love it if he wins a championship. You know, Nick, I've been very high on James Harden. But I can't stomach quitting on your team, especially when I got Kevin Durant. And I think one of the reasons that Harden wanted to go to Brooklyn, no matter what he said yesterday about Philly being his first choice, he was fine with Brooklyn, because he knew, you know what, in those big games, I ain't going to have to drop 30. Those elimination games, I'm not going to have to be the man, because KD is the man, and after him is Kyrie. All I got to do is play make, and he's a great playmaker. That's it. Run the show. But guess what? In Philly, you got to be the man again, James. I know Embiid is great, and he's going to take his share of big shots too. But I'm going to need you to do it as well. And look at this graphic. In elimination games, James Harden just does not get it done. We have enough of a sample size. Last 8 elimination games. Look at that. 1-7, 23% from three-point, 6.5 turnovers a game. I mean, James Harden, until proven otherwise, has to show me he's a foxhole guy, and his His instinct when the going gets tough seems to be to flee, to